Acknowledgement, do you? Will you do it?
I need to see it closer. I can't read. I can.
Okay, good, because I always get it wrong. I always
Nope,
mess
as soon
it
as
up.
I can get-
Okay,
Well,
so we're gonna, do you want to start it or?
Sure, you want to start and I can read the.
Okay.
language.
Do you want to put everything up? We'll do the whole thing, do the actual agenda.
Okay,
And then
on
we'll
the
get to
agenda?
that.
Sure.
I'll try to do my best. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see, our chair and our co-chair are not here right now. They're just in transit. So I'm just going to start the meeting just so we can all get started. And I believe we have quorum. So we'll start by just announcing that this meeting is being live streamed. And now we will do the land acknowledgement. I have a helper here. Do you want to go ahead?
Please stand if you're able for the land acknowledgement. So at TDSB, we acknowledge we reside on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, as well as the importance of establishing and maintaining cultural safety through learning from Indigenous peoples and perspectives. Thank you.
And I guess the next item on the agenda is to the approval of the agenda. So can we have somebody to approve the agenda? We can't see anything, so I don't know if anybody can see. Can you see it? Oh, you can move. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry, sis.
If there's anyone online who would like to move,
Yeah, so sorry, Tracy moved. We just need a seconder.
sorry, just a seconder.
Can I second or not? I don't know if I can. Can somebody online second? Oh, somebody, I think Steve is second. So we have, the agenda has been approved. And declarations of possible conflicts. Do we have any declaration of possible conflicts? That will just be a raise of a hand. And there's none in the room. And I don't think there's any online, so we'll assume there's no conflict of interest. And now we have minutes that are up that have been distributed from October and November. So if we just need to approve, let's do one at a time, I guess, because there's two of them. So for the minutes for October, we just need somebody to, again, approve the minutes for October, or if they have any changes, to let us know about that. So I don't see any comments. So can we have somebody to move the October minutes? Anyone online? Steve is going to move, and a seconder for that. And Leo is going to second that. That's great. And then the November minutes, same thing. If we can have somebody to move the minutes for that. Anyone online? You're going to second it or move it? You're going to move it. Leo's going to move it and a seconder. And Steve is, I don't know who's.
Just quick thing. This is Steve. If we could just go through and double check spellings. I noticed a couple. I can't remember which one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll do that. And then we will say that that has been approved and ready to go. So, okay, the next item is town hall, and I'm not sure who's going to do that. Oh, just in time. All right. They made it just in time. Our chair has arrived. So we're just going to have David take his seat, and then he will take over from here. So David, everything is.
That's okay. Diane and I are a team. Diane and I were a team.
Great, thank
All right, good evening, everyone.
Oh.
Oh, is my mic on?
Oh, I don't know.
you. Sonal.
Thank you. My audible now. Good evening, everyone. For anybody viewing online, my name is David Lepovsky. I'm Chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee for the Toronto District School Board. I apologize for being late, but traffic on Bathurst Street was ridiculous. My our vice chair, Richard Carter, is also in traffic. He will be here shortly, but is told me that he's totally content with us just moving ahead.
Good morning, David.
Sorry, hello? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is let's move to our agenda item on building on our town hall from last month. Just a couple of very quick words from me, and then I'm eager to go around the physical table and the virtual table to have a collective brainstorming and reflecting process. I'm not proposing that today we vote on anything, that we simply share our takeaways from the town hall. For those who may not have seen it, last SEAC meeting, we invited parents of students with special education needs to come and speak to us about barriers their child faces and constructive suggestions of what to do about it. We heard from around 60 or more people, and then more in writing and by video later or separately. We've all reviewed all of what they had to say. The staff have done it, and the leaders of the breakout groups did an excellent job of summarizing what was said. And in a nutshell, we heard stories that were wrenching from parents who are trying to do the best for their kids and who are encountering real and serious difficulties. We also heard parents that were understanding of constraints that the Toronto District School Board lives under, financially and staffing, and made constructive suggestions of what should be done. Our mandate as a special education advisory committee is to give advice to the Toronto District School Board. Therefore, for my part, I see us, we all heard from people who said there needs to be more funding. The funding comes from the province. We're not the advisory board for the province. We're the advisory board for the Toronto District School Board. So what I see our most useful role to play is to advise the TDSB, drawing on what we heard, what they could do with the resources they do have, what barriers can be removed, what processes can be improved to help them better serve students with special education needs, to help our frontline teachers and principals and other educators do best what they want to do, which is to serve all kids. So what I'd like to do, the other thing I want to do just before we go around the physical and virtual table is to say this. We, from our own collective experiences, all of us on SEAC, really narrowed our effort at the request of TDSB senior staff to sort of focus on 3 or 4 priorities in this past year, because if we come at them with too many priorities, it's not realistic that they're going to be able to effectively address them. So if you want to achieve change, it's better to focus on a shorter list. And hey there, welcome.
Thank you.
Joining us, Richard Carter, Vice Chair of SEAC, having survived the traffic. So, and it's not an unusual or unreasonable request from senior staff to say, give us a manageable list of things to work on. Obviously, other things will come up during the year. Now, of those 3, several were actually the focus of things we heard from parents at the town hall. So, and those 3, for the benefit of those who haven't, who are newcomers to us, are focusing on better informing parents and guardians of what's available at TDSB for children with special education needs and how to access them. The second, and these are not listed in order of priority, was coming up with a more effective way for parents to deal with the situation where they think a child's needs aren't being met. Either their IEP promised something, but it's not actually being delivered in their view, or the board didn't agree with the parents that something should be provided. And the third is dealing with refusals to admit or exclusions from school, either on a full-time or part-time basis. As we brainstorm today, we aren't discarding those 3. And we can, but we can also add to them or decide to refocus as we wish. So what I'd like to do is invite us to go around the table and just say, my takeaway from what I heard at the town hall was, fill in the blank, and an area or a couple of areas that I think we should find as important to focus on are, and then fill in the blank. Now, we're not going to list them here and prioritize them. Staff will be taking notes as they help us with our minutes, but we can then, and the chair for next year of SEAC can take this all away and try to come up with a distillation of what you all say and try to find kind of common ground among them, and then bring that back for a discussion. So this is just, you're not constrained. You can change your mind later, but let's just go around and get people's views. I'm allocating till 10:02, but if we need more time, we could take a bit more time, or we can resume this in January if we don't have enough time. Oh, all right.
Thank you.
So I'm going to now pass it over to Richard to invite both online or in person. We can go whatever order. If you want to just look at people in the room or look at people on the screen or however you want.
I can't see them on my screen yet.
So let's start in the room while your screen gets booted up.
Nora would like to go first. Go ahead, please. Nora.
Sharing my thoughts about the town hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
What your big takeaway is, and areas you think that are a priority.
So for sure, I heard the communication issue that we've been talking about as a committee. So I think families talked repeatedly about how language was inaccessible for them, or they couldn't find information easily on the website. They felt like sometimes people contradicted each other about what the service sort of looked like. And that the other thing would be communication about what's happening daily with their students. So I think some parents were describing they were unaware of situations that were occurring or the way service was being delivered. So it seemed all to sort of communication was a really huge issue for me. So I would probably say that was the largest thing that was impacting families. And I also think that the other thing I feel I had a number of families in my group that spoke about teacher education and about teachers being more prepared or more aware about how certain diagnoses impact a student's learning. And I think that led right into about self-regulation issues and how you support children who, when the conditions aren't ideal for them, become very dysregulated. There were families that were talking about, employment issues for them because they were called so often, those kinds of things. So I would say the big things for me were communication with families and professional learning for staff.
Great.
Okay, now online, so anybody in the cyber audience that wants to speak, please use your reaction, show your hand if you would. Okay, I see Beth. Please, Beth, if you go ahead.
Hi there. So just to echo what Nora said, we were in the same group and I heard the same kind of themes coming forward. And I communicated with Nora at the time. I don't think that, I think it was not it wasn't set up right for parents for the way that they were communicating their concerns to us. Our parents were extremely emotional, rightly so. And it seemed that they were bringing us concerns with that were very, very valid and legitimate, but that they may have been, I don't know if it was misled or confused or didn't understand what the role of SEAC was. And so they were bringing forward concerns and it felt like expecting, it just felt like there was like a miscommunication about what the purpose of the activity was. And I feel that that's on us. And to be quite honest, I'm one of these parents with a daughter with extreme, Kadak, I'm the representative for Kadak, but I am a parent with a daughter with very extreme, top tier needs in the school system. I saw nothing come to me about, talking at the SEAC meeting and expressing my concerns at SEAC through my community school. So I don't know how this was communicated to parents. I don't know how parents understand what SEAC is. I can see Syra nodding a little bit, and maybe you are understanding what I'm saying, but it didn't feel like I didn't like the way that it was organized on behalf of the parents. It just felt like, and we didn't have enough time to hear their very serious concerns and we had to rush through them. And anyway, that's my feedback. So thank you.
Is Steve's hand up now?
Hi, yes, thank you. So this is Steve Lynette. I represent Epilepsy Toronto. And I was in the same group with Nora as well. What I got out of it, and I understand the previous comments that it wasn't structured for parents, perhaps the misunderstanding what SEAC's role is. But at the same time, it's out of these individual stories that comes a sense of a systemic issue that I think sometimes it's incumbent on us as SEAC members to translate those individual accounts into something that is a system issue that can be addressed by SEAC. All of us have personal stories that most likely brought us to SEAC, and all of us have managed somehow to interpret those specific needs into something that SEAC as a committee can address. I do think that there is a lot of distress in the school board now with parents of students with special needs. There are a great many parents that struggle with either keeping a job or supporting their child. And the supports are numerous. I also think that while we are going from a system where students were segregated in a way to having students now included in classrooms, the mistake I think that was made was not providing enough classroom support or not understanding just how much support special ed classrooms actually give and not translating that, passing that into a regular classroom with IEP, EAs and SNAs. And as a result, we have teachers in regular classrooms with very little or no special education knowledge, trying to deal with physical, behavioral, cognitive, emotional challenges of the students, and being one, unknowledgeable, not necessarily through their own faults, but unknowledgeable about the myriad of challenges they're now having to deal with. And two, not having any supports from people who actually do know something about it, or having EAs and SNAs that are willing to work with students that need the supports. I also agree with some of the comments that were made about having safe rooms and quiet rooms. But unfortunately, a lot of this comes to funding. A lot of it comes to staffing. And for the number of EA positions that would be ideal, one, there aren't enough in the board as it exists. And there simply aren't enough people out there to do the work. It's a tough spot we're in. So my takeaway is that there's a lot of things that are trying to be done right, but I think that the system itself needs to have a rethink on how we're going to support these students in regular classrooms, because we're falling short, and as a result, we're falling short of in a much bigger way than even in the past. Thank you.
As for just a brief feedback, and I'm going to stay quiet throughout this, but for Beth's comments about how we do it, these are really informative thoughts. Should we do this again, as a number of people have said to me they think we should, that can inform how we do it next time and do it better. Richard?
We now have Trustee McLean. Please, Trustee McLean.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I thought it was an informative process. I thought it was really beneficial to hear firsthand from families. I thought it was encouraging for the most part that the families that shared indicated that the adults, that the support staff that they were their students were being supported by, were caring individuals and working really hard to help their children. But there was this overwhelming fact that despite all of that, they didn't feel adequately supported. And so I'm going to echo a little bit of what Steve had just shared around funding and the amount of people in the system. Despite spending, tens of $millions more than we're funded by the province, we're still not providing all the supports that families feel that their students need to give them their best chance at success. So I think there's a lot of work. A lot mentioned the communications component, which is something that we can are and will continue to endeavor to improve upon. But I do think there's a role for the board and the committee to play in terms of advocacy around um, you know, getting additional supports, creating a living wage for the people who provide those supports so that there'd be more people interested in doing it. Because Steve is right when he shares that there just isn't a bank of staff to be able and people wanting to work in this area to provide all the supports that are needed. So I think there's lots of work and lots of constructive advocacy that can take place. But overall, I found it, I mean, it was heartbreaking, but informative. And I thought it was a helpful exercise. So I'll leave it there.
We're going to go to the room for a moment. Leo, did you want to go ahead?
My there we go. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, so I had a few notes, and I'm going to speak specifically to things that pertain to my association, and then a few others that are more general. But some of the things that we saw, first of all, it was very impactful, I think, and as I think Stephen mentioned, it is our duty, I think, to sort of collate all that and gather and summarize what we see and try to find common themes. So one of the things that we saw was misclassification and inappropriate program placements for autistic kids, often placing them in programs like developmental disability programs, like the DD program, even when they actually don't have an intellectual disability, but are simply non-speaking, right? So lots of questioning on that. Some systemic bias in assessing nonverbal autistic children, often incorrectly categorizing them as intellectually disabled, limiting their access to appropriate educational opportunities, inadequate training and awareness among staff, communication barriers around IEPs, which might not be individualized or adequately implemented, and some concerns about safety as well. Then when we looked at, in general, we got comments about challenges in accessing appropriate services and placements. People say it's very, very difficult to get placement, inadequate support staff or maybe perhaps insufficient, right, due to funding, which leads, of course, to inconsistent IEP implementation. We also heard about a lack of accessible information, which is the whole topic that we have been speaking about in SEAC recently. Limited accountability for ensuring that IEPs are implemented, and a lot of comments regarding resource shortages, right? And then apart from these that we heard in the town hall, we also had some comments that came later. And some of them, I think, were particularly impactful for me. I think I have to just bring them up. One of the comments, which was very interesting, was that we changed our admission criteria to the specialty or to the alternative schools programs, like the schools that have like a different teaching philosophy, right? Or the schools that are geared towards the arts or sports, right? So today it's a lottery. And so everyone is saying that they're equal now. But in effect, that which you are calling equal can actually be inequitable for a child who could actually use and thrive in such a program. And the example that you give is, for example, maybe an autistic child who is not interested, or due to his neurodiversity in regular ways of learning, and is very art focused, or perhaps has a special interest or something that would do really well in one of these specific schools. And that student cannot access that because it has to go through a lottery, right? So that equality which the board is striving for is actually creating something inequitable for a child who could thrive inside a school like that, which raises a bunch of other questions which we would ask about those schools, right? Like how equitable are those schools anyway, right? Like if we consider and actually see how many special needs students actually attend those schools. I actually spoke to the principal of one last week just out of curiosity, and I said, you know, how many special education staff do you have at your school? She said, oh, we have one half special education itinerant teacher that comes around once in a while. And I said, okay, and what if an autistic child that has an IEP actually won your lottery and got into your school? What would happen? And she told me, well, we wouldn't be able to support them. So in essence, those schools, my question is, are they actually for, or are they actually open for kids with special needs, right? And that, if not, that is a huge problem. There was another statement which I think was very emotional And she basically wrote that she sees her child with no supports, having to fight every single day because of funding. And then she gets an email from the TDSB, which talks about these specialty schools, like, oh, enroll your kid in this special school, which is different, right? And then she gets emails about, oh, come to these programs after school for adults and for the community. And she is, quite frankly, revolted that you are able to offer all of these non-core services to people who are not even students, right? While kids who have special needs are being left behind. So her suggestion was to reconsider the funding of these programs, since we are not actually serving special needs kids first, as they are entitled to by law. So I think the way that the funding comes to the TDSB, I think, yes, there's a problem that we need more funding from the province, but I think we have to take a very, very serious look into the way that the money is spread around, because it's not right. The way things are is not okay. And it's not okay that kids are being left behind. And I think in a lot of cases, the situation is like when you go to a hospital emergency room, and if you don't have a bullet shot or a gunshot, then you won't be seen. You're only seen if you have a gunshot. And that's exactly what's happening at the TDSB. They're only being able to cater to the emergency cases or to the most needy. And parents come back to us and they tell us that they hear back from staff all the time, oh, but consider that there are kids with more needs than your kid, right? And that is just wrong, because they all have a right to that support and accommodation by law, not just the ones that have the gunshot. So thank you.
Okay, we now have Bronwyn.
Thank you, Leo. That was a fantastic example. I've been in the ER more times in my life with epilepsy and invisible disabilities. I have always been disregarded, so thank you for pointing that out. Yes, if you don't have anything major and visible in the TDSB, then you were disregarded. It broke my heart. Again, I'm representing Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children, but my son with hearing aids, I will say, always gets more than my daughter with invisible disabilities, and hearing all of those parents just broke my heart. And I just think there are many things that we could have done in a better way in the planning and organization, but really that is minute to me. The fact that we actually had all those parents for the first time come forward and speak, just sharing everything, I thought was phenomenal. So thank you for everyone who did that. I also feel concerned for these families that we've had only once to this meeting. I want to make sure that we don't leave them behind and forget them. So that is what I really want from this, is that we all stay connected to whoever did speak in those breakout rooms. There are people I didn't hear their stories. I still want to hear their stories. I still want to be there to help them. And I hope that we as a committee take all of their contacts and support them in the best ways that we can. So I hope that is put on the table with all of us. I definitely think we should do this again. And I think I'd like to see how the TDSB is going to actually react with this, because I felt that many staff did not comment. Really, I found that some people who were at very high levels of the TDSB seemed actually disengaged at the meeting, not trustees specifically, but I was concerned where people were out in the hall and not really, just jaw dropped, listening to these families, just disgusted of what they were hearing was happening in the TDSB. I didn't like the lack of focus, and that was really the most terrifying part, because we're coming to bring these families to the staff of the TDSB, and I felt that it was a huge disengagement, so that was concerning to me. So I hope to see more one-on-one direct focus with them next time if we do that.
Just before we continue, just to respond to one thing you said, and Bronwyn, thank you for all your feedback. We had set out as a ground rule for staff that they weren't going to be asked to comment on the specifics of what people were saying at the time. So
I think people should have still been engaged and focused and really listening. I was concerned by that. I know that was a rule, but I did see people going in and out of the hall, having side conversations, and I was focused on every single person that was speaking at that time, and that concerned me. So I just wanted that to be shared.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Arts, please.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person tonight. So I would echo quite a bit of what I heard. I thought like this was the first time SEAC done a town hall, so I really appreciated the forum. I did take a lot of notes, which I shared with Louise afterwards. And I would what I appreciate the comments about advocating for more funding and things, and yes, you would do that, but I tried to focus on more on the things that where parents were speaking up about things that don't meet our expectations or things that we can actually act on in the within the board without the forever waiting for the ministry to actually provide more funding. And there were quite a few, as Leo said, there were quite a few places where conversations about how IEPs are implemented, parents experiencing bias as they come to us, maybe even before the child's been met. Those are concerning pieces that I think it's as a system we need more focus and more to act on, more around the communication. Those are things that are actionable that we can actually focus on. And what stood out to me were places where I know what the system expectations are in implementing. So some of the comments about parents being told that they can't, that the school can't recognize ADHD. Well, that's not true. And that's not the system expectation. And so that's an education piece that we need to address. So I think overall the benefit was really good. I think it is good to have that check-in. I hope, I know it took a lot of coordination, but I hope SEAC can continue to offer these forums periodically. I think it's a good check-in in terms of what system expectations are being set. Are they, and are they being implemented in the way we expect at the school level? And where do we need more focus? I'm not going to get into the comments about secondary programs, but I do think we should have a further conversation of that on a later date. Because I think that's important, and especially the piece around what is needed to offer more options for secondary programming for kids with special needs. Yeah, but overall, I hope that they continue, and I mean, it was good to hear the experiences. And I did I mean, I was in the main room. So I thought people were really understood the intent of the evening. And they brought forward experiences, but they did, I think pretty much everybody reflected on what the system impacts or, beyond their child, their school piece as well, which I thought was helpful for both the committee and for the board. Thank you.
Right. Because our next agenda item is supposed to start at 10:02, I'm going to push it back just a little bit. If we've got last two speakers online and then Richard and me, if we each do 2 minutes each, and that would be, if you can, that would be great.
Okay.
Or do your best to try to stick to that.
Okay. Okay, and both of you are, okay. All right. Aileen, please go ahead. I'm starting the timer on 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. I wasn't able to attend, but I was able to review what's in the minutes and be able to draw some of the points that parents actually overall echoing, and I resonate with the 3 points that David mentioned about the focuses on the resources, the timeliness, and I believe it was mentioned about the teachers' education. I believe with education, consistency in the deliverable is important. In taking the information and delivery the information, I think the monitoring of this to make sure the teachers are being knowing and understanding and deliver at the right time, at the right place for a spectrum of students. I think that's important. And that go back into the IEP. I believe the transition plan in the IEP, which resonate with our PPM, Program Policy Memorandum 156. I believe there's some consistency could be monitored closely and be able to have a consistent dialogue with parents, not only once or twice in a year. I believe within the school year, there could be more consistent checkpoints, maybe on a monthly basis, depending on the needs of the student. And also I could tie it into the refusal to admit as well. That actually, I was thinking about the importance of peer bonding. I think one of the points that stood out to me is a lot of children or students with special needs, they felt, I think, the anxiety would resonate. But I think if we build an environment that could have close bonding with the peers and with the teachers' facilitation, I think that could help more attendance. If I'm happy, I'm thinking about school, then possibly that I'm thinking that I would have a positive vibe to be resonate with my peers. So I'm just thinking out loud that way. And maybe we can use the playground, we can use recess, and we can use a lot more times outside of classrooms to make that connection. So, but that's still within the day of teaching. I think teaching could be away from the four walls. I'm sure teachers are doing that as well. Maybe we can just build more consistency and tie into that, and that resonate into employment as well. So if we can hone skills, then we can build that. I think I'm up to my 2 minutes now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please. 2 minutes.
Not be unmuted. We,
Can you hear me?
yeah, now we can.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I think the town hall was a wonderful idea, and I appreciate that a lot of families had the courage to come forward and share their concerns and their lived experiences with us all. I think it's so important that we do these things so that people do not feel isolated and alone in their struggles and their challenges. It would be nice if perhaps we can have some sort of town hall that includes students sharing their stories as well, if they feel comfortable doing so. One thing that really resonated with me was that there was a lot of, I guess, deficits in emotional safety for students with disabilities within the school board in terms of them feeling unwanted, undervalued, and not heard, whether due to lack of resources or, teacher educational skills or funding and so forth. It really saddened me that students with disabilities are not feeling like they belong in the classroom, like they have an equal right to be within the classroom and have access to education, and that their abilities and strengths are being valued and built upon. And yeah, that was I just wanted to say that kind of surprised me the most, and I big kudos to everybody who had the courage to stand up and share their story. I know it's very stressful for parents and students alike. Thank you.
Was it Diane or Tracy? Tracy?
Well, I mean, there's not many different things than what other people have already said. I guess the two other things that do stand out for me is one, the lack of support around IEP implementation. I think that came out clearly over and over and over again. And I think the other thing was the parent concern protocol. We heard from parents who have tried really hard to advocate and have actually followed the parent concern protocol and then been pushed back down to other people to have them support. And we heard many times about people finally going to the superintendent, which is a very scary thing for a lot of parents to do, and then being told that they can't be supportive of them and being moved back to the principal. So I think that was one of the things that I wanted to highlight.
Okay, I'm just going to add less than 2 minutes of comment here. Or did Diane want? Oh, sorry.
That's
I wasn't
okay.
sure if it was Tracy or Diane. Which?
No, yeah, we both
Go
think.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who put this together. I think it was an amazing event. It's a great time to get that information. And I found it really rich and a lot of emotion. And this is real. This is real stuff, probably more real than anything that we've seen at most of our meetings and aligns with some of the concerns. So because of this information, I think a couple of other people said this before, is what do we do with this information? And I think it's so much, like I was overwhelmed at it all. And there is a lot of themes. I couldn't even comment on one of them because there's so many. And because there's so many, we don't want to make the mistake of picking the wrong ones or doing the wrong things. And I'm hoping we can maybe suggest that we have a committee or something that we can follow up on this, work with SEAC and the staff, and just figure out a way to do something with this information so that we can make it actionable and real. So just following up, but I just really think we need to do it because it's really great. So thanks again for putting this together.
It's just kind of recapping, resignating what we feel, what we heard, et cetera. And I know staff has all these notes in front of them, all these comments and feedback. And I like the idea of, yes, setting up a committee, but I'm wondering how we can fast track this. Staff has the information in front of them. Can they come back? Can they look at this, condense it, not to trivialize anything, but bring it back to some key areas that they can immediately work on? And I'm going to ask Nandy if you want to comment to that at this point quickly. Just later. Oh, later. Okay. So you've got the ask, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
In fairness, I told staff in advance that we would give our brainstorming here, but I wasn't asking staff to respond here. I want to give them a chance to reflect on what happened. Let me give you my closing reflections. First, some thank yous. I want to first express a huge thank you, if any are watching, to the courageous parents who came forward in person or online or in writing or in video to tell us their really, really heartfelt and painful stories. They more than one said they're trying to stay composed, and it is harder, and it is unbelievably hard to be able to do what they did. And we thank you, and it is our responsibility to honor your courage by trying to do what Richard was just saying, which is try to convert this into actionable items. And that's what will be available for SEAC in the new year. In my dreams, we could not only do another one of these next year, but maybe even see if other SEACs in other parts of the province want to do it at the same time or around the same time. So it could become a parents of students with special ed needs opportunity around the province. I've sent a letter to the Council of Ontario Directors of Education, asking them to forward it to their special education advisory committees, telling them what we did in our town hall, encouraging them to do the same and offering to collaborate with them. I've not heard back from the Council of Ontario Directors of Education, so I don't know if they are going to do what I asked. I hope they will. Our kids need it. I want to thank all of you who took part in this. I want to especially thank Richard, Nora, and Leo, who did an excellent job conducting their 3 panels. It's not easy. and they did a really, really good job. And I want to do a huge shout out to staff. The staff have been extremely collaborative throughout on developing this. And they haven't been asked to do this by us before. And we were plowing new grounds. They were quite cooperative throughout. The tech people were great. Senior management were great. And Leanne is irreplaceable as an amazing support. We're indebted to you for every meeting. We're especially indebted to Leanne Dixon for that meeting. So I see as we close out this discussion, our next step is to turn this into action. Yes, we could use more money, but we don't need money to answer the parent who happens to be a lawyer who said that she was told by her principal that her child doesn't qualify because she has ADHD, and that's not recognized as an exceptionality. We had a presentation by staff about how the board accommodates those kids, whether or not they're in that definition. It's clearly not working consistently across the board. We heard from a lot of parents of kids with ADHD. I don't think it's just a matter of education. I think it's also a matter of oversight. There should be consequences to a principal who does that now. I don't mean punishing them, but they should know that you don't do this. And if you do this, it hurts a kid, it violates the rights, and it's contrary to what TDSB's policy is. And that's just not a matter of education. There's got to be more. But there are other examples we heard that fit that description, where it's not a matter of more money, it's a matter of how the board uses the money it gets. And we have ample opportunity to offer constructive suggestions. With that, we're a couple of minutes over time, but we're going to move on to our next agenda item. Over to Nandy to update us on the special education plan. And this we're expecting will be a relatively short agenda item subject to questions from people. Nandy?
Thanks, David, and good evening, everyone. We also, I'll take my less than 2 minutes, Richard, to say thank you as well to SEAC for all the efforts on the town hall. And we did submit our notes along with themes to the planning committee. So that is for action by the committee and our notes as well. And I think it was a true collaboration amongst SEAC members and staff to make the evening go smoothly. Being in and out of rooms, I can speak for myself, trying to ensure everybody came back to the main room on time, working with the social worker manager and so forth, who came here, by the way, when they don't support adults, they support students, but we were still able to get them. So working through those pieces as well. So yes, there were staff members, including myself, in and out of the hallways to ensure that the evening went smoothly. With regards to the special education plan, as you know, there are 2 areas that SEAC must provide or be given the opportunity to be provided, to provide feedback on, and those 2 pieces are budget and the special education plan. Now, our special education plan is very robust. It contains all of the components required by the ministry. So the ministry has a standards document that tells every single school district what they must include in a special education plan. Ours is compliant and has, in fact, additional information. However, I will ask Nora or Richard if they have additional pieces that they would like to share in terms of getting some feedback, if there's any to get. Because like I said, it's been a few years of a lot of work done to get the special education plan compliant, but also including additional information through feedback. And we do have a feedback survey link that we do get feedback in on as well. So Nora, I'll pass it over to you for this, please.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Danny. So I think in the past, we've had a huge committee that has robustly gone through that. And to Nandi's point, there is a standards document. And from my knowledge of the standards document, which I've gone through, the TDSB is compliant. Having said that, it doesn't mean there's not information parents are hoping to see, or as we heard from the town hall, parents are struggling to understand. So for me, one of the things I find challenging is that we want to communicate effectively, and the special education plan is part of that effective communication. And so I think one of the things is we're now looking at creating parent-friendly documents, because clearly the special education plan isn't a parent-friendly document, but it does outline the services that the board has to offer. Having said all that, now that we have a motion in front of the board and that's being taken care of, that communication piece that's not really meeting parents' needs, the plan as it stands, if you have concerns, changes, or additions, I'm hoping you can email those to Richard and me, and we can collate them for staff and pass that along. But I guess from my perspective, I didn't want to really sort of hijack and make the special ed plan double duty for staff when they're already working on a communication plan that helps streamline things and make it more understandable for staff or for families. So knowing they have to produce that for the ministry, knowing it covers the basics. If people have things they feel really need to be revised, please let Richard and I know, because I wouldn't want to distract staff from our motion about making parent-friendly tools that sometimes the ministry says isn't appropriate because it changes the language. But I think at this point, that's more important than a great big overhaul of our current plan. But that's my feeling. So if somebody disagrees, please feel free to say so. And if people have additions and revisions they want added, please email them to me and Richard, and we'll collate that for the staff.
Two thoughts, which will make this a quick agenda item. The first is I undertook to Nandi that we would try to get the feedback to staff by the January meeting if possible, so they can put this thing to bed. And so if you can, that's great. As Nandi and I discussed, Nandi, let me know if I get this wrong. Essentially, the plan is not really, they call it a plan. It's a report. This is the board reporting what they're doing. It's like filling out your tax return, reporting what your finances are to the government for tax purposes, but it's for a different reason. So it's it's reporting a system that's running pretty much the way it ran last year. If there's any major changes to the future special ed plan as a program as a result of the board's upcoming review of special ed, we could have a discussion about those changes later, but this is just sort of things as is. And if we as SEAC want to see something changed in how special education is delivered, such as a result of the feedback at the town hall, the place to do that is not in the special education plan, because it's just a report of what they're doing. It's for us to come here and do what we're doing and what we're going to start doing in about 1 minute a couple of minutes when this agenda item's over, which is delving into a specific issue. So that will make it easier for us and for staff. Nandi, do I have it right?
Absolutely. And I just want to add another piece there that every district is required to submit along with the special education plan a parent's guide to special education. And to me, that's where I see our efforts going. So we do have a parent guide. We do have it translated into different languages. We have it in Braille. We have it in video form. But where we would like to go is to work with the K-12 Standards Committee as an example to redo that guide. We'll still have the guide because, again, the ministry dictates what needs to be in that parent guide, but then have an addendum, if you will, to that guide that's written in parent-friendly language and simplified. So that's where we see that. So David, you actually have hit the nail on the head. It's a report of what our programs and services are. And that hasn't changed, to your point, from this year, last year to this year. So as we move forward, if things were to change, then yes, we would update the plan.
Okay, Richard, you wanted to speak.
And then Nora has her hand up again.
Right. And
Just-
then we're going to call it for onto the next agenda item. Okay, go ahead.
And very quickly,
Richard and then Nora.
to Nora's point, send us the feedback, but also through the special ed plan, there is a mechanism in there that you can directly send feedback. So if you happen to be on a page and see something, I understand there is a link for feedback. I haven't had any updates on have we received anything, but I'm guessing we haven't, and that's why there's been no feedback. So that is another mechanism. And just to add to what Nandy said there, it would be great to have within that parent guide to special education, a very simple, or within the special education plan as an insert, guide how to use this for parents. Basically, why would they pick it up? What would they be looking for, and how would it help them? And really just kind of simplify it so they can go through it, figure out what they need to reference, and go from there. Nora, please.
I just wanted to clarify the standards, Nandy, the standards document is Special Education Ontario K-12 Section B. Is that what we're talking about? Okay. I just have some few questions, but I will take those in an email. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next agenda item. Nandy, do you mind if I flip exclusions after and go to the IEP letter first? Because I'm anticipating that's going to go fairly quickly.
That's fine, thanks.
Okay, so I'm just reordering things, just watching the time. We have, for the benefit of anybody watching, not knowing the background of this, our committee has asked staff to review the letter and revise the letter, which goes to parents of a student for which they are planning to develop an individual education plan, so that it would, because under the regulations, the parents the school board's required to consult the family, and we wanted it to include an invitation to a meeting to discuss the individual education plan. We gave this feedback in February. Staff came back with a revised letter in September. A number of us felt that it needed some more improvements. Staff have come back with a new version for this meeting. And I want us to be able to give feedback. I'm going to start. I think it's a substantial improvement. And I've only got two minor suggestions myself. I want people to feel free to chime in if they have any other thoughts. The one that I would imagine would be the easiest is later in the letter, it asks if you need a translator or an interpreter. I'm just going to suggest that it should sort of more broadly state if you need any accommodation to your disability. That not to replace the language, but to clarify that it's a broader offer. I think that actually I lied. There's three things. The second, which I think is easy, is to just reiterate again that we could do this meeting either in person or over a Zoom meeting. I know you've got a reference to hybrid in there, but I had to kind of reread it a couple of times to make sure. And I'm thinking for a layperson who's looking at, do I want to ask for a meeting? Just saying, we could do it where you come into the school, or we could do it either over the phone or over the internet. That would be helpful. The third thing is, and this is a bigger thing, I would encourage the board to consider including a letter or a sentence that simply says, the board is committed to do its best to accommodate your students' learning needs. So they understand that that's the focus of the IEP. But in any event, I think with these minor modifications, I think it would be great if this letter could start going out in the new year, and we might want to see if we can get feedback, subject to what anybody else at the committee says, see if we can get feedback after a while to see if it's having the desired impact. Can I just offer it, see if anybody else wants to chime in with their feedback on the letter?
I'm just looking online, looking around in the room. Go ahead, please.
So Jessica Miklos, ABC Ontario. Alana and I took a look at the letters and we agreed the third draft is substantially better than the original. But we noticed that all three of them start with this reference to a previous discussion about IEPs and a number of fairly technical definitions. which might distract parents from what the actual purpose of the letter is. So something very simple, like we're in the process of preparing your student's IEP for this school year. We welcome your input. And indicating in there that the document can be changed at any time. Would be really important and helpful. And then perhaps moving some of those definitions and legal references to the bottom after the signature line. The other point that we noticed, just that initial reference, all three drafts start by saying, this is in reference to a previous discussion. They were signed by the principal. I've never had a discussion with my students' principals about these things. And I think that the point of that line was to remind principals that it shouldn't be the first conversation that parents have ever had with somebody about IEPs, but that should be a reminder to principals, not the opening line of the letter, because it starts us off on a foot of saying, well, that's actually not true. The person who signed this letter has never had a conversation with me.
Thank you, Jessica.
That's really helpful.
Leo Alexander.
Hi, thanks. I appreciate the simplification of the letter. I do have a few concerns. If we look at the first version of the letter, you're going to see that the first two categories were areas of strength and areas of need. When we go to the version 3, you still have areas of strength, but now you replaced areas of need for areas of growth. It's a minor verbal thing of language, but what you're doing when you change need for growth is you're putting the onus onto the child instead of the school. When you say areas of need, I'm reading in my head, and when I'm writing the IEP, accommodation. This is what I need for the child to be successful. When you say areas of growth, you're saying your kid needs to do better. Your kid is not good enough. It's not about accommodations anymore, right? Yes, we can definitely have a category called areas of growth, but I am very strongly against removing areas of need because parents need to have a section to write down what the accommodations are, and you completely remove them. In the first version, you have areas of need. You also have a section about disability/medical condition. You also have a section about special equipment, assistive, adaptive technology. You also have a section about safety and self-regulation. When we speak to the autistic parents, like those sections don't even fit in this box. You can write pages about that stuff, and you just got rid of them completely, and you turned them into areas of growth. So now it's not about accommodating the kid anymore. It's about, come on, do better, kid, right? So I really don't like the way this goes. I understand that there's some perception that the letter is better, but I think it's absolutely worse. I'm sorry.
Nora?
I guess I'm in the middle. I like the letter itself, but I would agree with Leo about some of the categories. I guess I was more, and people can pass categories if they don't fill it, they need to fill them in. But I was like you, Leo, I like the categories as well that they had in the first letter. But I like the way the second letter is written. There you go. 50 million opinions, but.
Thank you, Nora. I don't see any hands online, David. I don't see any more help.
Right.
I see Nandy's hand up in the room.
Oh,
Thank you.
Nandy, go ahead.
Thank you for all of the recommendations. We take your recommendations under advisement, and we're going to finalize this letter. It cannot be a constant bringing back, going back. So thanks. We have some pieces, I think, from tonight that we can actually go back and revise the letter with. But then first semester and term 2, we will be pushing it out with our second set of IEPs. So thank you so much for all of the recommendations, and we will, in the new semester, you'll see the finalized letter being put out. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think this has been a really positive process and I think we're in the ballpark, and you've got feedback that you can work with, and whatever comes out in the new year, we'll see how it works, and then we can revisit that at a later time. Thanks. All right. We're still a little bit behind. Exclusions, refusals to admit. We asked staff to, for the benefit of people watching this who may not know about all the details of this, under the Education Act and regulations, School principals have two powers that affect our kids. One is the power to refuse to admit a person to school at all for as long as they determine if, in the principal's view, the person's presence would be detrimental to the physical or mental well-being of students. We call that an exclusion, or a full day exclusion. The other is the power of the principal of the school board or the school to unilaterally say to a student with a disability, we're modifying your school day. It's going to be shorter than the usual school day. And we've been advocating for constraints on this both here, and I can tell you disability groups, including ones I'm involved in, and others at this table have been advocating for the province to rein in this power. I asked two things. One is just to bring everybody up to date. I received by grapevine the fact that the Ministry of Education was actually planning to do a program and policy memo, or PPM, on this power, and they were going to hold a consultation on it today. The coalition I lead, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, wasn't invited. I wrote the ministry to say kind of what gives. I sent that letter to everybody here by email. I understand TDSB was also not invited. We never heard back from the ministry with an invitation. I got by grapevine from one organization that was invited that the meeting was postponed. We haven't heard anything directly from the ministry. I don't know anything further. But in the meantime, we turned to the board and to give feedback and work with them on how they do deal with this. I asked Nandy a couple of months ago if we could get up-to-date data. The data we've been provided relates to modified school days, not full day exclusions. It's the first time we've been able to get data on this because staff are now asking principals to provide it. Nandy, I'm going to kick it over to you for whatever intro you want to give, but I do have one question. The list of numbers in the chart you gave by month, next to some of them had the letters ABA, and I didn't know that if that meant it was kids with autism who were getting applied behavioral analysis, or if it meant something else. I couldn't figure it out. So maybe if you could clarify what the ABA was, that would be great.
BA is for students who are on a modified day for attending supports or ABA therapy. We'll spell out the acronyms next time. Thanks for that reminder. I'm just pulling up my notes here that I wanted to start with. So I just want to start off by saying we're on the same page as SEAC members when it comes to ensuring that all students are able to attend school for a full day. And if they are on a modified day for a number of reasons, our goal is to get them back to school full-time as quickly as possible. So really excited to be working with SEAC on this space. So we are committed to ensuring access to learning for all students, like I said. However, there are times when a student may need to be on a modified day schedule. We've established for these situations a process that principals and superintendents must follow. And this process was implemented in February 2023. So we just completed our first full year under this process, 2023, September 2023 to June 2024, and that's the data that is before you in the leadership report. So I just want to really quickly go through that before any student can be placed on a modified day school day, a number of pieces must be considered. So we do put out a memo to all administrators and superintendents saying these are the steps that must be followed. And we do let them know that it is in rare circumstances and as a short-term measure that a student may be placed on a modified school day only after all other options have been exhausted and supports. Students cannot be put on a modified day schedule or be asked to stay at home because they're not toilet trained, for example, or because there are staff absences. So we are very explicit in sharing that with administrators and superintendents. Principals must involve their family of school superintendent in the process and must consult with parents, guardians, caregivers, and special education staff, any other central staff as well, when considering modifying a student's school day. A modified school day must only be issued as part of a collaborative problem solving, not a disciplinary or punitive plan. And it must include input from parents, staff, and when appropriate, medical, clinical, and other professionals, and in consultation with the superintendent, as I mentioned, and special education staff. And we also have let schools know that it's important to remember that a modified school day will have an impact on the student and the student's family. Somebody mentioned work as an example, parents' work, that is. So each month, the department collects information centrally about students on a modified day. Principals receive an email to complete a form with information about the few students, if any, who are on a modified day. And all students who are on a modified day are included, including students who are attending therapy such as ABA. And schools have to indicate the reason for the student being on a modified day in the reason field. Students who leave school early as part of the SAL program, some of you might be familiar with that, supervised alternative program to work, for example, or to attend school part-time or to attend community programs which provide an alternative learning pathway, those students are not included. So superintendents access reports for their family of schools and are required to follow up with schools each month to ensure that students are on a path to returning to school full-time as quickly as possible. And the data shared that's up on the screen right now shows that 457 students out of the approximately 41,000 students with disabilities or special education needs are on a modified day schedule. And just over half of those students are on a modified day for attending ABA therapy. So we have previously heard from SEAC members that principals may not be reporting all the students who are on a modified day. However, all TDSB administrators are to adhere to TDSB processes. And of course, if we become aware of such a situation where a principal is not reporting, it is addressed swiftly. So the data before you is the data that we have been collecting. If information is shared with third-party providers, such as clinics, it's also something that we want to look into, how we can get that information from them. And that would be through two-way consent form that we would use. The parent would agree with the third party to share that information with us so we can take action as needed. And that is the information before you. And we have started and we've collected for September, October. And of course, as we go along, we would be looking to see how the data is changing. Thank you.
If we can just lead, I want to open it to questions. I've just got a few that I wanted to start with if I can, Andy. This is really helpful. So a student who's in the ABA numbers, the parent would have agreed to that, wouldn't they have?
The parent what, sorry?
Sorry, for the numbers of students who are on a modified day to receive ABA, that would have been done with the parents' consent. They wouldn't, would the school board ever say, we're sending your child to ABA even if you object?
No, everything is done with parent consent, even the ones that are in the second category. As I mentioned earlier, parents must be part of that decision-making process.
So in other words, there should be no students on modified days where the parents want the child at school all day.
There should be no student on a modified day without parents being a part of that decision-making process, along with any other school-based and central staff.
Right. Okay. And the other question I had just briefly, and let's send it around. According to the board has a, you mentioned that there's a document sent around to principals every month to sign to fill out about this. Is there a comparable document sent around for them to sign about where they've refused to admit a student to school, like for a full day?
No, so we have a refusal to admit procedure, which I've presented on prior at SEAC. And again, there are numerous steps that would have to be followed to engage in a refusal to admit or a formal exclusion. But David, I have a feeling you're saying informally if a principal asks a parent to keep a child home, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or either way, there's a form that goes around to principals that you've just described regarding modified days, which is great that you're doing that. I'm just saying, is there, and I know there's a process that a principal is supposed to go through before they do a refusal to admit, whether they do it calling it informal or whatever they call it, but they're telling a parent, your child has to stay home. And my question is, do the principals get a memo to fill out, to report on a monthly basis how many students they've refused to admit for full day as opposed to put on a modified day?
So this modified day form actually captures if there's, so when we say modified day, they also capture students who may be home for a full day. So we do have students who, for example, come on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they're home on a Tuesday, Thursday. So those would be full days. For the full day, for the exclusion you're talking about, they have to follow the steps in the procedure. And we have very few of those, which is what I presented on last time. So we would not send a month by month reporting tool out for formal exclusions because there's an entire process that has to be followed for those. And that's the report that Caring and Safe puts out that I shared last time.
All right.
Okay, we have a speakers list. I've listed myself next, then Leo, then Nora, then Bronwyn, and then Steve I see online here. So mine is very precise or very concise. What is defined as the school day? And the reason I asked this question, I had a conversation on my way here tonight with a parent where they are told by the principal their child cannot stay at school over lunch hour because we don't have support, yet that school is supporting other students with special education needs in the lunchroom. They are allowed to stay. This one particular child is not allowed to stay. And I think this, I've heard this many times from other parents that they're supposed to come and get their child at lunchtime and bring them back after lunch. Is the lunch hour part of the school day? And if they were excluded from lunch hour and staying at school, where is that recorded? How is that recorded?
So Richard, again, that's a specific case. And so I would encourage that parent to get in touch with the school superintendent to discuss that case. But in a case like that, I can't really address that because I don't know the specifics of the case. However, that would be captured in here as well because they have to put what parts of the day the student is on a modified day for. But really and truly, no principal should be saying we can't support your child during the lunch hour. We do have families and parents who say, I would like to take my child home for the lunch hour because they need a change in scenery or I need to get them regulated and I'll bring them back or whatever the case may be. But again, if that's happening, that's something we can address separately.
Okay, I just wanted to know if it was considered part of the school day because I've heard it more than once, so I will follow up. Thank you. Okay.
I'm just, before we proceed, I'm looking at the time and what I'm going to suggest for time, because we're doing the election at 22. Nandy, would you be okay if we continue with this now and have the leadership report after the election?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's just do 10 more minutes on this and then we proceed to the leadership election.
Okay, 2-minute timer. Leo, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'll be fast. First of all, thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it. I know that this is not required by the ministry for you to collect that data. So the fact that you do is really, really laudable and thank you. 2 more things. So I think this is a great step. I just wanted to highlight one thing that we hear from parents sometime. And I know that this is very tricky because I don't even know how you would collect that. I think it's more on the education angle perhaps and not perhaps on policy. I don't know. I have to give it some thought. But sometimes the modified days happen in a way which is very subtle or soft, if you will. Like I spoke to a parent the other day who told me that she basically got an email from the teacher and she gets this email like on repeated occasions. And the email is very, very simple and very short. It's basically just a heads up that we're understaffed. That's the email. That's the email. There's nothing else. But if you read between the lines and you're a parent that actually cares for your kid and doesn't want your kid to have an accident in school because you know that they need accommodations, that email is saying, leave your kid at home. Don't come in unless you want your kid to have trouble, right? So they're not actually requesting for a modified date, but they're making it very clear, do not come, right? So that's, I don't know how to solve that. It's systemic, but it's something that has to be looked at. And then the third thing very quickly is there any way that we can break down the other category? And if that's confidential because of whatever reason, can you at least give us some idea of some of the rows that are inside other, just so that we have, I don't know, an idea of what's going on, right? Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. So it is, we do see it happening in the system, what you're saying. And again, it's unfortunate, but the way we tackle it is through messaging, communication, professional learning, building capacity that, you know, even when you say something like this, understand that this is the impact. So that is how we are tackling that. And we do message. We have a monthly PowerPoint that goes out to all administrators and superintendents. And we feel like we're a broken record because we tend to repeat a lot of the information month after month after month. I do want to reassure everyone listening that we do see a change. You know, modified days was not something that people were talking about, but they were doing it very frequently. So this is something now that is top of mind. People are more aware of it, understanding those pieces, like you said, Leo, even though they're still happening, I would be confident to say they're happening less frequently because there's such attention to it and there's a formalized process around it. In terms of the other part, there would be, the reasons would be varied because we don't do a drop-down menu. The principals would have to put that in. And to be quite honest, one of the pieces that we are going to be working on with superintendents is principals who just say behavior, as an example, right? And so there is parent agreement because nobody can be on a modified day without parent agreement. But what was communicated to that parent in order for them to agree? And so that right now I am in a process, and it's very time consuming, of going through every single family of school and highlighting for the superintendent reasons that you know, like that are very vague, or behavior. And then the superintendent has to follow up with the school principal. Can you let me know more? And what is the plan to have this child return to school full time? So there are pieces in the system still that you mentioned, but we are working very hard to get better at all of those pieces.
Okay, next on the list, we have Nora. 2 minutes, please.
Thanks. And I also want to congratulate the staff for collecting the data because we've had numbers reported about this, Nandy, and they were lower, but I don't believe they were lower. I think these are more authentic data, and I think had that having built in more accountability and having people fill that in. And I'm sure we're in a place of growth, right? Where people are learning. I think things, you know, as you're hearing Richard's question and you're hearing Leo's question, people are looking for, they still don't really understand what modified means, right? So thinking lunch doesn't mean modified if they're not there, or thinking, you know, insinuating that things won't be safe if you send them. So I appreciate that you work and message about that and that the staff do. I think I just want to supplement maybe some ideas because I also know families, when we tell them the board's not allowed to do that, contact your superintendent, tell your principal they're not allowed to do it, contact your superintendent. We've heard Tracy mention that it gets pushed back to the principal sometimes for you guys to try and track all those things down, for families to find the courage to do that. And we know intersectionality is going to play into who feels courageous enough to say something and who doesn't. So from an equity lens, that's not really the best approach necessarily, because that's going to lead to different power structures that cause some people to report and other people not to. So I guess I want to add a few suggestions possibly. One, I think it would be great if there was a contact email, if it could pop up on the website that sort of announces, before you read anything on the special ed website, it says every child has a right to an education and public education. And here's a number if your child's been told they can't attend. And if it's the Human Rights Office, if it's whoever it is, but even it's a place where parents know they can say, I've been denied my rights and I need help navigating that. and it's not the school, because I think that gets pretty intimidating sometimes. I think that would be fabulous. Even just the thing that says every child has a right to attend.
Thank you,
would be
Nora.
amazing. No, wait, I got more suggestions, man. SOEs, if SOEs are asked to conduct on their audits or their visits with principals, if they physically ask all the time, how many are on modified day, how many are on modified day? If the SOEs could constantly, when they tour their schools, ask about that.
Nora, we got to get one more speaker in.
Okay, an internal reporting email for staff to report when they've seen it, and possibly an external audit, like a RIAT audit, like a regional internal audit
Thank you,
team to
Nora.
look at it.
Okay, Bronwyn, last speaker. I'm sorry with the
Yeah,
others.
it's okay. Thank you very much for doing this for the for modified. It is very confusing. While we're on this topic, I was hoping, Mandy, if staff could also take on to research how many students are on a modified IEP and to go through that process to actually dissect how many are on a modified IEP due to invisible disabilities. I've had 2 children on it, one again visibly with a disability, and also now with this dyslexia, but also dyscalculia. We have modified her IEP. I was lost and I was really confused, but the teacher was very kind and broke it down for me. But it's overwhelming to go through and to sort of suddenly make this decision on what modified is, because it can mean multiple things. It's not just the school day. It's multiple things. Parents need to be given more explanation with it, even though our teacher did a great job. I just feel that parents need more support with it. I also am scared now because I've signed off on this as having my child having dyscalculia, because she's going to basically fail math because she's not able to get enough support in the schools with her invisible disabilities to get to where she should be because she's so behind. But we are privileged. We can get her tutoring. We can do all these things. English is my first language, but how does that go to families where they don't speak English? They have no idea what these things are. And I want to know what the supports are for that and how the TDSB is also, if they can invest the time to also look at how this is happening for modified IEPs, because I feel like those are being pushed on parents and they don't know or forgotten. I did not know that my son's IEP in this September was actually still modified until the teacher called me and said, hey, your son's doing really much better in language, so I think we should take him off. But these discussions, there needs to be more reminders and discussions because we're overwhelmed.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
All right, we've got 2 more people on the speakers list, but we've got a hard stop now for the election. So I'm hoping this can be brought back in January. So hold your thoughts. They're not, and there's going to be more room to discuss this. But with this, Richard and I take a powder here, and staff come up to run the show here.
Coming this way. It's exciting. David, turn this way, there's a chair.
Oh, you want me to come that way?
Yeah, come to the.
All right.
Okay. Hang on. Here we go.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for your patience. It's a little different process. Usually we would begin the meeting with this, but we're good. Just give us 1 minute, please, so I get the script. Not yet. Oh, got it. Okay, so before we start the elections, we would like to extend our gratitude to both Richard for serving as vice chair for the last year, and to David for serving as chair for this last year. It was a privilege working with both of you, and we accomplished a lot collaboratively. So thank you both for your leadership. The election for chair is held first. Only members are eligible to be nominated, so alternates are not eligible. Members may nominate anyone that is a member, and they may accept or decline the nomination. Members may also self-nominate for a position of chair. If there's only one nomination, the candidate will be acclaimed without a vote. Candidates may have up to 5 minutes to address the membership prior to voting. Voting will be by secret ballot. Please send your vote in the private chat box to Leanne, or text her if you your vote if you cannot access the chat box. Members who are attending in person will be given a ballot to complete. In-person and Zoom ballots will be tallied immediately, so we'll ask for your patience again as we tally the ballots. If there is a tie, there will be a second vote. If there is still a tie, the decision will be made by a coin toss, and the coin toss will be held on camera. All members are eligible to vote, and alternates may only vote if they're replacing a member. And the election for vice chair will follow the same format. So we will open the election for chair. And members can also either nominate someone, or members can self-nominate. Nora.
I nominate David Lepofsky for chair.
Happy to do it.
I'm just going to go, Steve, is that a hand for the modified days item, or is that a hand for nominating a chair?
Hi, that was for the modified days. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So just checking online if there are other nominations for chair.
I nominate David for chair. Bronwyn.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
Accept again.
Okay, so I don't see any other nominations. I'm scrolling through the members online, and I'm looking around the room. So, Mr. David Lepofsky, you've been acclaimed as chair for SEAC.
Nice work.
Okay, so we will follow the exact same process for vice chair. So nominations are now open for the position of vice chair. David.
I nominate Tracy O'Regan after absolutely groveling with Richard, and he will not do it again.
That's in your notebook.
Don't take, I'm not suggesting Tracy is second best.
Yeah,
Boy, does that sound horrible?
it did sound
But I'm
horrible.
not nominating Tracy because Richard wasn't great.
I
Okay.
nominate Richard. Bronwyn. Sorry, Richard.
I will decline to accept the nomination. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, so I have one nomination. I'm trying to look online here. Any other nominations? I don't see any in the room. Do I see any in the room? No. Any online? Tracy, do you accept?
I accept.
So congratulations, Tracy, you're acclaimed vice chair for. So we'll pass it back over. Thank you.
You did not. I gotta go up there.
Tracy, you're up here?
I'm coming.
While Tracy's coming up, I just want to say three things. One is thank you to you all. You are fantastic to work with. Second, a huge thanks on all our behalf to Richard. It's been just a delight working with him over the year. We met through SEAC. We've become friends at SEAC. We've collaborated, and we're all enriched by Rich being with us. And thank you for that. And third, I think we could look back over the past year and we set some goals. We wanted to get the toxicity out of our meetings. I think it's gone, long gone. We wanted to focus on substantive measures that will help our kids and not sort of procedural side issues. That's what we spent all our time on. And we wanted to focus our attention on things that will matter the most. And we've been doing that because of you and because we are finding shared common ground among us. And we're now empowered by this breakthrough of the town hall that is, I think, catapulting us even further forward in a way that's really positive. And we've done it while collaborating with staff, not always agreeing with staff, but that's okay. Collaborating doesn't mean they have to agree with us and we have to agree with them, but respectfully. And we're now, we've taken our message to the trustees, and I hope we are becoming a voice that is seen as a credible voice on addressing the needs of our kids. And so let's do it for another year. And Tracy, I'm delighted you're agreeable to be vice chair. We're going to have a blast working together. And just so you know, Richard was always kicking me under the table. So I'm moving further away. I'm moving further away. Could we move now to the leadership report for staff? And then I want to start my second year keeping to the standard set in the first year of finishing the meeting on time. So if anybody has association reports, get ready to talk fast. Nandy, leadership report, please. That would be great.
So David, did you want to give Steve, I had seen his hand up, to the opportunity to.
Yeah, no, what I said before is, Steve, I'm going to bring this back onto the agenda. If you're okay with it, Steve, for January. But if you want to give it to us for a minute and you got more thoughts because it's on the tip of your tongue, I'm happy to do that now.
Okay, thank you, David. Congrats to you. Very quickly, from my perspective, seeing this over the years, I think the only way refusal to admit will stop being used on students is if the ministry changes the Education Act to specifically say that your refusal to admit is not intended for students. And it could be done with 2 or 3 words. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks. Nandy, leadership report.
Okay, really quickly. I would like to draw attention, even though we've put a number of items in the leadership report, to our, for those of you online and in the room with access to technology, I would really encourage you, if you're able to please click as I speak. So we've developed a number of new resources and updated our website based on feedback from the K-12 committee, and it's been ongoing work for us as a department as well. As mentioned, as of September 2024, psychology services, speech language pathology services, and occupational therapy, physiotherapy services joined the special education and inclusion department. And so we have created 3 new parent guides, one for each of those areas. and those have been posted on the external website for parents. We also have started in September a parent newsletter. And while the first two, we started a staff newsletter a couple of years ago. The first two had informational items because it was our first time doing that. And as we continue to develop, we're hoping that our newsletters will give families some strategies that they can use at home with their children. And that newsletter has also been published online. We do ask schools to share them out. We've heard tonight that you don't always get the information from schools. And for that reason, we've put them in TDSB Connects as well, which is an email that goes to every parent who has signed up for email with the TDSB. So please, when you have a moment, take a look at the Public Special Education and Inclusion website because there are a number of new resources added there. We continue to offer parent drop-in sessions and also more formal sessions for parents, guardians, caregivers, and we've published those out as well and asked schools to share those out as well. And we presented at the Parents as Partners conference recently to support families with some strategies, again, that they can be using. The theme of tonight was heard from the town hall and also from comments shared around professional learning that's needed to build staff capacity. And we have been engaging in professional learning for our newly appointed administrators. And we are holding 6 sessions this school year just for newly appointed administrators. We've held 4 of those, and we have 2 more happening in the winter months coming up. In terms of professional learning, we have been giving SEAC a list of all of our month-by-month learning that we're offering to the system. And I do want to flag, though, that staff absenteeism continues to be a concern, especially now moving into the winter months with people getting sick and the like. So while we may offer extensive professional learning opportunities, we don't always get the turnout as we would like. Autism support.
David's chair again.
Autism supports and services. We have some projects that are happening right now, and on the morning of yesterday, actually, and the evening of December 16th, TDSB social workers are facilitating a developmental disabilities virtual connect for parents, guardians, and caregivers of children with developmental disabilities and or complex needs. So we are offering a number of supports that I wanted to draw attention to. We also have put there for you the students on a modified day chart. And December 3rd is the International Day of Disabled Persons. And we try to draw awareness to days, months, and so forth in our staff newsletter, as well as our parent newsletter and share out with SEAC. So David, I try to go as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Great. No, that's fantastic. Questions? Anybody? Question in the room?
Richard.
Okay, Richard,
Thank you.
former vice president.
Very brief question. In terms of, I noticed the flyer for the Connect, Nandy, and a couple of the other initiatives where they're sent directly to parents. Are the members of SEAC on that mailing list so that we can distribute them to our communities as well? Because I don't think I've seen any of those, and I could easily get that out in an email blast so it comes at parents from both angles.
Thank you. We will make sure we do that, Leanne, moving forward. Thank you, Richard. And Richard, I do apologize because I remember you suggested that before.
Anybody else?
Not in the room.
Okay, online.
Hold your horses there. I have my hand up. It's Hastings, trustee. Nandy, through the chair. Could you send us, all of us 22, the elected 22, the things that you'd like to get through to the parents? And we'd like to put, I'm pretty sure we'd like to put it on our webpage because we've got it and we can stick it there and it's going to be seen. Can you do that?
Thank you. I can do that, but I did put it in Trustees Weekly last week as well, Trustee.
No. Send it to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I realized that because I got here late, I may have missed out on this, but we have new trustees on SEAC now after the organizational meeting this week. Am I right? Or do we?
They're here. I don't know who they are.
All
I'm
right,
not
no,
one
David,
of
we
them.
have the same trustees on the, there was no change to SEAC.
Oh, it didn't change.
Yeah, so it's a 4-year appointment for trustees under,
I thought it changed annually. Shows you how out of touch I am. Okay. Okay, great. Trustees reports or association reports, anything?
I'm gonna say not this month. I'll bring much more stuff in January.
That was Michelle.
Yeah. Okay. Leo.
Sorry, David, very quickly, I think this might be of interest. The updates that we had that we already sent in, they're going to be uploaded, but I think more interesting is that we had many of our SEAC reps for the rest of Ontario attend a town hall. And there's at least half a dozen who want to do the town hall in their own SEAC. So if you did not get the reply directly from the directors of education, you can be sure that they're going to be running them anyway through their association. So it's an invitation to the other associations, maybe to reach out to your other reps and try to push the town halls throughout the other SEACs across Ontario. That's one way of doing it.
In my staff, in my chair's report, I included a copy of the letter that I asked the Council of Ontario Directors of Education to send to SEACs. So if any of you are part of associations that have reps on other SEACs, feel free to fire it off to them. Any way we can reach any of them, the better. My dream is to build a listserv of SEAC so that we can communicate with each other, because there is no central hub that enables us to right now. Other association reports. If not, let me wrap up the year by wishing everybody a healthy and happy holiday, thanking you all for the time that you devote to SEAC, both volunteers on the committee and staff who give up their evenings. And I want to wish you all a great holiday, and let us begin the new year hitting the ground running with a view to living up to the expectations of us that the town hall has created for us, by us. Thank you very much, and adjourned.
Thank you, David. Wonderful.
All right. I just plan to talk or read or do lunch or something.
Let's do lunch. No, okay.
No.
Yeah.
So are you?